Today on Off the Hinges, relax, pour yourself a drink, and unwind from your week. I'm joined by a special guest, and I have my whiskey in hand. I'm so glad you made it. Are you ready? Let's slide into the vault. Okay, uh, happy Friday, kicking off the weekend, and we are winding down into the holiday season. So thank you for making time for us. I'm going to take my first sip of whiskey, and it truly is my first, so I'm excited. And I'm more
Okay,
excited for you to
good
tell
morning here.
people.
So I'm gonna take coffee.
Well, good for you. I won't make you confirm or deny if it's an Irish coffee. So,
Okay.
cheers to you and to everybody joining us. And introduce yourself. What's your story?
My name's Cassie O'Malley. I'm a nurse by background and also a coach. I work in well-being right now. Um, that's professional life, Cassie. I have three small girls, which are like the true Cassie. And I don't know. I live in Baltimore. I love the beach. Everything can be healed by salt water. What else do you
Yeah,
want to know? I'm
I
here to
mean,
make people better.
I want to unpack the real Cassie with three little girls, but I don't know if I don't know if we have the time for that. But yeah,
Why not?
probably not. We've had a lot of talks about our maniacs. We were just talking about our little 2-year-olds, the little hellions that when Cassie dialed on, she's like, "What are you laughing at?" I was like, "I was just reading a message about my 2-year-old from my wife." And oh,
There's a really my I have these two very quirky uncles. They're very
mhm,
quirky. But they both have three girls. They're all older, obviously, now because they're my cousins.
mhm.
Um, but they, when we had our third girl, they claimed they were inducting my husband into the three girl club, and it's this very special club, which is sounds ridiculous, but there's something very unique about three girls, I think.
Well, your husband is a lucky guy, and
Mhm. Oh, the lucky.
I also will say a lot of prayers for him being a member of the Three Girl Club because yeah, it's a lot. Well, I'm so glad you're here. As we talk about connection, before we jump into some of the listeners' questions,
Mhm.
which are good ones,
They're
I'm
really
excited to hear your thoughts on it.
good.
But straight out the gates, as always, what are you thankful for this week?
Mm, I'm gonna go with the girls. They're like ultimate teachers. They're teaching me a lot about myself.
Hmm.
They teach me deep patience, and they
Oh,
show me
serenity now.
how I can have multiple tones of voice at one time.
Hmm.
Yeah, the girl. I mean, yeah, cliche, but hands down.
Yeah. And what are their ages again?
6, almost 7, 5, and 3.
Oh,
Mhm.
if you could, oh, this might not be concise. Do your best. If you could concisely capture the differences in those ages, I want to see if they fit the first, second, third mold at all.
Oh, yeah. So the first thing I'll say about them is that like each of them is like a deep piece of me that like maybe I didn't want to face for a while. But my old
Congratulations.
yes, it's really healing. My oldest is like the caretaker, the worrier, the like little boss lady.
Mhm.
The middle, sweet, we call her Bunny in the Middle. There's a book called Bunny in the Middle, and it's like
Mhm.
sweet Bunny in the Middle. She is the like lovey peacemaker, uh, always happy, dancing, singing little
Mhm.
love bug. And then my youngest, sweet Wesley, is straight Spitfire in the best way, but like this girl has so much power attitude and also like love, but she's just like fire and energy and
Yes.
will not let people walk over her.
Yeah. No, man. I'm not even going to start with mine, but yes, I can
Yeah,
really,
there's a thing about birth order, I think.
yeah, well, yes, I agree. And also the thirds are just, man,
Mhm.
it's something else. It's a whole nother level. God. Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. I could stay there for a while. We will move on. Uh, what are you learning this week?
Mm, I am actually going deep into chakra and sound healing work.
Okay.
So I've done uh, both and like have I use both in some of my practices, but
Hmm.
am kind of started to dive a lot deeper into it. Uh, and like how we use sound in connection and sound in particularly healing. I find
Hmm.
it very powerful. I had I went to a breath work like experience a couple weeks ago,
Hmm.
and it was just the only way I can explain it is insane. And I've been to them before. This one was just particularly good. And I think also like the other women in the room just brought a lot of good energy, I guess. But yeah. So that's what I'm learning. I'm taking a little like video course.
Hmm.
And
Cool.
yeah, it's fun.
That is very new. Right on.
Hmm.
Okay. And how do you hope to grow as you rest and reflect heading into the weekend? That is a strong assumption that you can rest and reflect, but hopefully, yes.
I reflect in the mornings. I try to get up at like 5 and do my
Hmm.
journaling then. I find that to be a very helpful practice. Otherwise, there's absolutely no rest and relaxation.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. How do I hope to grow? I am really working on like up pausing
Hmm.
because there's no rest and relaxation, and everyone in my house always needs something. Uh, Mostly me. I need a lot of things.
Thanks for
Everybody.
clarifying.
No, I think trying to pause and like really hear the needs of the people around me.
Hmm.
Um, because sometimes if I think like if you pause, uh, you can maybe get to the solution faster than when we try to like it's okay, stop whining, it's all good. And I'm like
Hmm.
whining myself, whining my husband, whining my kids. Um, so yes, pause. I'm trying to work on the pause.
Good. And kudos to you, by the way, because, yeah, like you said, aside from the nursing and the coaching and all the other things, and
Mhm.
then being a wife and a mom to three kiddos, that's a lot. And you juggle it gracefully.
Thank you.
But yeah, I can only appreciate watching my wife with a lot of similarities
Mhm.
in, the medical profession and all these different things. It's an endless,
Mhm.
thankless grind.
Yeah,
Uh, I will say, without knowing your husband, I'm confident that a lot of that strength comes from probably you all balancing each other out. Because
yeah,
without my wife and vice versa, her without me, it would be I don't even know how we'd pull it off.
yeah, I
Oh,
completely agree.
oh, it's terrible. Okay, first question on connection. This one says, as I ponder this topic, I wonder if it comes from chemistry or does it come by effort? I would
Yeah,
love your thoughts.
I love this question. Um, well, can I frame first connection the way I kind of like teach it, love it, think it, and all of that?
I
Um,
would hope that you would frame it first. Please do.
Thank you. When I do coaching, both individually and then like large group facilitation, I always kind of frame connection from three places: self, others, and purpose. Right.
Hmm.
And like essentially, like if anybody feels like jacked up in some way, it's because one of those things aren't connected. And so, like, the work is around, not the work, the experience, the whatever is around finding which one of those is out of whack and then reconnecting to it.
Hmm.
It's constant. And so, to that question around whether it is chemistry or what was the other word used? Chemistry or what?
Or does it come by effort?
Or by effort, I would say it's both. Right? So there's a part of it that you can have this like instant connection. This one's largely around connection to others, right? So you can have an instant connection, but true connection is continuous effort and curiosity and like finding out about the other person when you're talking about that connection to others piece.
Hmm.
Uh, I would say the same to yourself, right? Like you've got this basic level of connection to yourself because you're in your own body, you're in your own mind, but it takes effort to continuously be effort and curiosity to be like aware of what keeps you well connected to yourself and when things are kind of going off the rails or off the hinges, as they say.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And when you said you wanted to do this with me, which I was extremely happy, and we talked through different virtues, and it sort of landed very quickly and steadily on connection,
Mhm.
which is very fitting, I think, for both of us, because a lot of
Mhm.
other people, through whether it's the coaching stuff we've done together,
Mhm.
always correlate that thought and idea to both of us pretty readily.
Mhm.
And to me, it's, yes, I think it is both. And it doesn't always feel like it takes a lot of effort, like it's
Mhm.
difficult because I find enjoyment from it. But
Mhm.
maybe a different word that might be a similar context to what this question comes from is it takes a very deliberate focus. So it might not be hard for me to make connections with and for other people. It
Mhm.
might be a gift that I've worked on over time. So it became a little more effortless
Mhm.
as I've gotten older, but I always need to focus on it to do it well. So I can't just mindlessly hope that chemistry will take its course.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, then it's not as meaningful or as purposeful. So,
Well, and we all change, right? So we're all like evolving every day and growing. And so if we're just side by side assuming that our chemistry is going to hold on to us, like,
hmm,
you know, tomorrow I'm a
yeah,
different person.
exactly. Yeah, and I think of you, even the little nuances that you were describing of your girls being different. Mine are absolutely different in their own beautiful ways and zany ways. But um, even though they're my daughters and we naturally love each other a lot, a
Mhm.
good connection, it does take very thoughtful
Mhm.
framing, like what you did, because their desires or the things that might click with their chemistry are so different, so much
Yeah.
so, even at this young age. So to actually connect individually and to show them love individually, it takes a lot of intelligent focus to do it well.
Well, I mean, I think that's you're so right. I think that's exactly like the point of connection to self because the the like easy neural pathway is to connect how we like to be connected to, right?
Hmm.
Like whatever feeds us. We're like humans are self-centered people by nature. Like we're built on
Sure.
fight or flight. Like we're meant to help ourselves survive. Obviously, that evolves with like relationships and children's and human and like you know the humans around us. But we are meant to
Mhm.
serve ourselves, and so like the connection to self matters so that you can kind of set that to the side and then say what does this my kid need, what does my partner need, what do my friends need, that may be different from how I process.
Yeah, great answer. So, like with everything in life, or most things in life, probably isn't an either or. There's a lot of both ands that
I
exist.
live in gray a lot.
Yeah, we like to take the cop out. No, that's not
Hmm.
true. That's not true. Really, really good framing. Thanks for that. And thank you for framing what it means to you up front because, God, that is so important to understand the context and literally just what does the definition of that word mean. I'm
Yeah.
really glad you did that because if you didn't, I was teed up to ask you.
Wait,
And
what does it mean to you? What does connection mean to you?
I just want to say same as you because it was so good. Uh, no, it is very similar. I find connection, um, I will say meaningful connection
Hmm.
because there are connections that should probably be disconnected.
True.
Something that is a worthwhile connection to me is always serving my purpose.
Hmm.
Um, I think at the core of me, like who I really believe I am here to be as a person on earth. And I do believe it relates also to other people and myself, but there are connections. I think if you want to look at it from the sense of a connection to a noun, like a person, a place, a thing, an idea, there it is very multifaceted. The ideas, the things, the behaviors that I can make connections to that might not be a tangible
Sure.
living object, but those connections are things that I am for being my patterns and habits of thought and habits of action around. So I view connection sort of in a broad scope like that, but interpersonal connections, 100%. I think you have to be really well connected to yourself
Yeah.
before you can understand how to really connect and relate to others. So I love your personal framing of it because that's sort of the purpose of this
Yep.
big picture. But yeah, that's my answer. I'm not just going to say what you said, but it's
Yeah.
similar.
We could do both.
Thanks, both and. See, it's both and.
Both
Live in
and.
the gray. Crush it. Okay, next question. Are there any common myths or misconceptions regarding connection that you would like to debunk? Kick that
Uh,
out of here. Debunk it. Go.
yeah. This is going to tie to some other stuff, I think, but the I think number one maybe myth or like struggle that I think people have with connection is that conflict is bad. And I love conflict, which
Oh,
it sounds a little dicey. Like I promise I'm not an aggressive human. I do drive aggressively on the highway, largely because like people go too slow.
right.
Um,
Yes.
but I think like conflict is this ultimate place of curiosity, and that goes not just with other people. Yes, again, very much with other people, right? If we're in conflict with somebody, uh, there's two things that are happening. One, we're finding out something about ourselves, what matters to us, right? Because if we're riffing on something, obviously I care about whatever it is my point of view is.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is I'm learning about you. And so if I like that pause, right? If I pause and say, why is Josh being so like rude to me?
Yeah. Why?
Totally.
You say that often. Why are you such an asshole, Josh?
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm sorry.
exactly.
Yeah.
What's enough, man?
Oh.
Um, but I can learn something, right? I can find out like if I'm curious rather than like,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, trying to run away from it, I can find out something really important about you that might connect us a little differently. And then uh that works both with self and purpose too, because like if I'm having a lot of internal conflict with something, obviously my body or my mind's telling me something's not quite in alignment with maybe like my purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So um I think if we were to really take a beat and think about conflict differently, all new things, all growth comes from conflict, right? It's a decision that something's not working, or I need more, and you go seek that growth. But we kind of live, I think, we're in a world right now where conflict is very heavy, and so I think people oftentimes want to turn away from it,
Right.
or like really root into their own side of the conflict, which I again, like that's how we are as humans. Like we are about our values and the things that we believe. But if we take a beat and are curious,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to learn in conflict.
Yeah. I love that you use that term uh, in a self-fascinated way because it's been swirling in my head the
Mhm.
past several days as I've been thinking about this on my own. And side note for everybody, we did not discuss this one bit. Fact, we did not discuss
Yeah.
conflict related. Nope,
Uh-uh.
0%. But I love that it's very aligned, which doesn't surprise me, but it's very reassuring to hear someone else, I guess, verbalize the things that float around and ping pong inside of my brain, which can be a scary place at times. Because I agree with you. I think conflict is a beautiful and a necessary part
Hmm.
of life
Hmm.
holistically. Um, and it
Yeah,
can
we
take a
don't
bad
build new
rap.
things because we think it's going well, right? Oh, this is
Right.
going really well. Let's build something like brand new.
Right.
No, we need something different, like something's rubbing. Let's, you know?
Yeah. We'll dive into that term a little bit more later, but I think my thoughts on not to try and pinpoint specific myths or pinpoint specific mindsets exactly, but I think generally speaking, I'll just take a generalization of something that can be debunked. When it comes to a connection, if things are floating through someone's head that sound a lot like an excuse why you can't connect, I don't have enough time. I don't have the
Mhm.
capacity. I'm afraid of this true connection or being vulnerable. All I will say, a rule of thumb for me, when I want to make an excuse,
Mhm.
is excuses are not compatible with excellence. So if I want excellent connections,
Yeah.
which hopefully would be a goal, I can't make excuses. So I sort of need to shut those up. I'm not saying don't listen to your inner voice. Don't deep dive into the psychology of like gut instincts. I'm just saying like, when you're making an excuse. And if you do it, knock it off, make the
Yeah.
connection, put in the work, struggle through the conflict, like what you were saying.
Yeah.
Because then it's worth it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard and it's constant, and I think that um I would agree in that, like, if you truly want the growth or the connections, you're going to have to face that it's not always going to be comfortable. Actually, it should be uncomfortable because you're learning something outside real house. Um I
Mhm.
do think I would say though, if you find yourself making a lot of excuses, just think about why you're not ready, right?
Yep.
Like, why are you not ready to be vulnerable or connecting or whatever it is? Because sometimes I think when we're talking about connection and like the connections we have to make, we go to like the big picture or the broad one when really there's probably a more rooted one, likely with ourselves, that we have to address first, right?
Mhm.
Like, why are you making the excuse,
Yeah. I love it. Next question.
Mhm.
What are strategies you use to connect to yourself?
Mm. Yeah. There are a lot.
Okay.
I would say the first one that comes to mind is usually some form of outside, uh, being outside. I'm
Hmm.
really impacted by like the nature of things. Um, and exercise. Like, in fact, if people in my life will kindly say, if I'm being a bit of an asshole, people will kindly say to me, "Have you exercised today? Have you gone for your walk?" Rather than calling out that I'm perhaps being a little salty. So
I was gonna
that's
say
always
that probably doesn't come from your 2-year-old because she probably just says, "Mom, don't be an asshole." That's
well,
why.
that's probably true. Yeah,
That's true. Okay.
she doesn't know the word asshole yet, but she will.
Well, don't listen to this because then maybe she will.
The
You're
other thing, the number one thing though, and I think this is where people like a lot of times they get a little funky with it, and like myself, there are days that I get really funky with it, but breath work is like the fastest and number one way, I think, to connect to myself.
Mhm.
But that's one of those, when you talk about excuses, like I make excuses about that all the time. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't have time to sit here and like really breathe, because if you really breathe, like, things come up, right? Like, you recognize what's happening in your body, you recognize maybe what you need to do today or what you're avoiding.
Mhm.
Um, but it literally 5 minutes or less can really root you. Um, and so that's one that, kind of with this sound healing stuff, I'm diving into a little bit more too. And I'm really, when I facilitate groups, like, it's interesting. I facilitate groups and I watch people resist while I'm trying to guide them through a breath work or meditation. Inevitably, by the end of it, even the resistors have like moved a little bit. You can see it, even with people's
Mhm.
eyes closed, right? Like, you can see it happen. Um, but oftentimes, like, I'll realize at the end of it, I've been like holding my breath the whole time. Um, so that's a really intentional one that I have to think about,
Yeah.
but works.
Yeah. It does work. Nice. I think
How about you?
yeah, that's a good question. It's a very good question. I think connecting to yourself, there are a lot of things that are similar. Because I've seen some of your posts and I do have to weave in the accountability to hold me to things that I know are good for me.
Mhm.
So as simple as it is, the weekly accountability when I structured these virtue engagements that we're doing through the end every couple of weeks with the podcast. So I frame it on Monday, and then Wednesday when I'm engaging people to ask, okay, like what questions do you have? This is sort of like your last chance, like what I did. I enjoy doing rucks. I enjoy going outside, and I had to be very thoughtful of to hold myself accountable. I also wanted to make it a little bit more interactive and engaging with what I think is things that are natural to me. But I was like, now if I tell people I have to do this every week, I have to do this every week. And I know it's good for me. So I had to like strategically build in things that I knew were beneficial to connect to myself, to really put myself in a position and in a mindset that was healthy to engage with others and to connect with others.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very simple, I guess, description and analogy of little things I do, but it's not a huge thing. I think we make a mountain out of a molehill way too much. And there are small, simple ways that if
Totally.
we actually are deliberate to do them, they are game changers for your day, your focus, for so much.
Yeah. I mean, I think you make two really good points. One, like, obviously, you have spent time getting to know yourself well enough to know, like, what structures you have to put in place for yourself to
Mm-hmm.
um, create the connection that you need. Right.
Right.
And so, like, that in itself is a big deal, right? Because so many people
Sure.
like don't even realize what it is that they need or how they connect well. The other thing is, I think you're absolutely right around um, this like overwhelm and all of these things that we have to do to connect, to, take care of ourselves, to take care of others. And um, I think in this world of like constant saturation of information, it just it makes it so overwhelming, and it doesn't have to be. And that's why I say
Mm-hmm.
something like breath work, like it's less than 5 minutes. You can do it sitting in your room. You can do it sitting in the parking lot or in your driveway in your car. Like it's I don't know. We make it out to be something that, oh, you have to eat well, you have to exercise, you have to get 8 hours of sleep, you have to like do your self-healing journey. And sure, do all those things, but like it doesn't have to be so crazy, you know?
Yeah. 8 hours of sleep sounds magical some nights, that's for sure.
Oh,
So
I mean,
that
it's
one surely won't happen all the time.
it
You know,
is ridiculous.
God, not with
And
three little
actually, it's
maniacs.
like I could digress the whole thing, right? But they say 8 hours of sleep, but it's not like that actually isn't even the most important part of sleep, right?
It's true.
Yeah.
True.
Anyways.
Okay. So final question. Circling back to this great word that you brought in, and I'm so glad you did. How does conflict relate to connection for you?
Mm, yeah, I mean, so two ways. One of my top values in my life is growth. Like I just really thrive when I'm learning or taking more in or when I'm being curious.
Hmm.
And so um when I'm paying attention enough to be curious in like relationships that are a bit of a conflict for me, I find that I learn a lot more and I can actually facilitate my work a lot better because I'm getting a different understanding of people. Um, I think it also really shows up in my self and purpose connection. And like, I've spent a lot of time over the past couple years getting to know like what fills me up and what drains my energy.
Hmm.
And so I have like, I'm really attuned now to when something's off inside me and then like saying I need to pause and like figure out what that is.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think it shows up in everything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I equally have, I think I'll narrow it down to two buckets really quick. So, first of all, um, I will say the intrapersonal conflict or like a conflict that maybe you're warring at inside of yourself.
Hmm.
That is something that has to be dealt with and understood
Hmm.
to be able to be meaningful in whatever external connections you're going to have.
Completely.
So, and very simply put, I'll say it this way. I think in an effort to connect with other people,
Hmm.
people are not authentic to who they really are.
Mm.
And it takes a lot of time. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier in the talk of, oh, you've spent some time to really understand how you need to connect to relate to others. Absolutely. And thanks for saying that because it's a very deliberate focus. And I know you do it as well. And I think there's such a misconception that we have to share all of the same ideologies and interests and whatever. Not at all. But I will say that it doesn't take me long, and it probably doesn't take most people long, to very quickly separate the wheat from the chaff and realize someone that's being real. And so the
Hmm.
cliche of real recognizes real. Yeah, I can tell when someone has gone through the internal conflict to figure out who am I really? And what am I bringing to bear? And what am I offering for myself and for others and for the world around me? And you do that very beautifully. And I mean that
Thank you.
in all sincerity because it didn't take long through all of the things that we've shared, all the jokes we make about like, we're going to go video off and just text because I'm about to like be done with this middle of the night during the intensive stuff.
I'm just middle
I'll,
of the day. So if I were middle of the night, it would be a whole different deal.
and there's truth to some of that, but unabashedly, that's sort of how it was.
Yeah.
And sure, you should still are teacher's pet and the star student and all of those things.
Hmm.
But those, it didn't take me long to go like Cassie is a real person, very authentic person. And when you spoke, it was thoughtful. And when you connected with others, it was gracious and very active to listen and hear and understand them. And that stands out. And I think that only comes to be very apparent when someone has actually struggled inside of themselves to figure out themselves. Um, that
Yeah. I mean,
that's my number one on it. And I'd say I wouldn't say you've mastered it because I don't think anyone has mastered it, but you've done a pretty damn good job at
thanks.
making that corner turn on it, which is fantastic. And very simply, the second thing I will say is to me, and I'm not even going to say there's a science behind this, there is, but I'm not going to go nerding on it, but just simply and practically, the deepest connections I have with other people
Hmm.
have come when I've been side by side with them in conflict.
Hmm.
100% of the time. The most meaningful relations I have are with those who have been with me and been there for me through hell and back. Whatever
Yeah.
that hell looked like, and it's looked radically different on different scopes. That means something because someone
Yeah.
who won't run away when it gets tough, there's something to be said about a person who will just roll up their sleeves and jump in a trench with you and get to work and care for you as a person. And on the flip side of that coin, I would offer that if we aren't willing to be that person for other people, how can we expect them to meaningfully connect to us?
Yeah.
So, to really try to bring some altruism and some empathy into our interactions and to meet people where they are at and to really try to serve them through the shit in life, man, I think then people will really find some meaningful connections with each other and for each other. So, that is where conflict almost is a focal point of connection to me. I think it is an imperative to have
Yeah.
good connections.
I mean, don't you think? I think, in part, like our chosen, well, whether they were chosen or not, like our careers, the very different, have similarities in that like you're in uh some shit,
Mm-hmm.
knee deep in some shit with people
Right.
that sometimes like or many times you don't have a choice, right? You don't have a choice with who is next to you and
Right.
you just have to save a life, right? And
Right.
like I think you're right. I think that that is a different um and maybe a more rapid like exploration for people in that
Mm-hmm.
connection piece. I do think that when somebody is not showing up authentically, uh, I don't know, not everybody always knows that, right? Like some people
Sure.
do if they've done a lot of self exploration and like you're really paying attention to people. But I think for those that don't, like, my question for you is like, what's stopping you? Like, what's holding you back? What are you afraid of? Like, likely they're afraid of something in themselves. and it's probably not as scary as they think it is. And also, like, people aren't going to care as much as you think they do.
It's a great
Like,
point.
I think we put so much on what other people are going to think of us, and
Hmm.
I think of others, you think of others, but probably not in like to the depth sometimes of what inside ourselves we ruminate on.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So, conflict, such a out of left field word to some, maybe, as we talk about connection, but I find it very fitting. So, I'm so glad you went there with it. That's a great
Yeah.
point.
Here to shake shit up.
You are. You do a great job. So before we close this out, I'm gonna hand the metaphorical mic over to you and say anything you want to share or any key insights or takeaways for our listeners and for me, because I always learn from you as we close out this talk on connection.
Oh, I wasn't prepared for this one. I
That's a
think
low ball. Come on, that's a low bar question. That's not hard.
is it? I mean, this is such a moment.
It is, but I think you'll do fine. What you
I
got?
think I think I would just going into or like in the throes of the holiday season, which can be beautiful and challenging and chaos and quiet and everything. I think I would just offer a challenge to everyone to spend, I don't know, 5 minutes, preferably outside with your feet on the ground, and just be. You can focus on breath if that's helpful, or just sit there still, like quiet, no
Mhm.
phones, no nothing, just sit there and see what you experience. We're really resistant to stillness, I think, sometimes. Um, and so just sitting for 5 minutes and see what you can come up with.
I love that. There's so much to be gained from a good pregnant pause. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And
very
we
helpful.
resist. I was doing a meditation with a group of nurse leaders like a month or so ago, about
Hmm.
150 nurse leaders. And there's a lot of power in sitting in silence in a room with people. Um, and so I had, everybody's eyes closed, didn't tell the leader of this group what I was going to do. And so I said, let's just be. And because the silence kept going on, she thought that like I was done. Right. So she opened her eyes, she got up and then realized, like, oh shit, we're in this moment. And she was so funny and so gracious about it. But like that's how our minds move all the time, right? Like, oh, we can't even experience it for
I
90
know.
seconds. So 5 minutes, silence, outside, ready, set, go.
I love it. I absolutely love that. Um, for me, I want to end this saying, first of all, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
I know
you.
you're more on the front end of your day than I am. So hopefully there will be a time in the near future where we can get all of our crazy girls together. The adults can share a nice whiskey at a normal time together. So y'all are all welcome to hop the big pond and come to Norway. I'm sure it's not a cheap flight for five. Well, I know it's not because I've done it, but
I mean,
you should come on out. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I'm into it. I
Let's
told
do it.
Gabby the other day, so we're
You
gonna
got a you got a crash pad. The girls can party and keep us up all
Norway
night.
feels right.
What's that?
Norway feels right.
It does. It's a great place. Um, but especially as we head into the holiday season, I want to just let my wife Laura and my girls Aria and Alessia and Karina know that I love you so much, and all of this is for you. And I hope that someday this provides you with all this technology and all these cool abilities to record things. Sure, this is to help other people and to connect with Cassie, but it's also for you. And hopefully, there will be times where you can draw on insights from such a fantastic woman with so much experience, like Cassie is, and look back on life and be like, oh man, now I get why dad did this stuff. Because this is really important. And it's going to mean something when you're old enough to understand. And I hope you understand the heart of me, understand the heart of a sweet mother like Cassie, who has 3 little girls. Um, Everything we do is thoughtful and intentional. So hopefully that comes through in this. But I'm so proud to call you my friend. And I'm so proud of all that you're doing because you juggle a lot of stuff and you're crushing it.
Listen, that was really beautiful. And I think you are a wonderful human and father and husband and all of those things. But you just made me look like shit saying all that after I was like, oh, take a moment outside.
Well, take a moment
I
outside
love
with your
you
children.
too, guys.
On that note, we're so glad you joined us. Cheers to you. My next week will be with them at Christmas. I will do a Christmas rock on the 25th.
Can't
But
wait to
if
see
I don't talk to you again, thanks so much for doing this.
you.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Off the Hinges. Don't forget to follow Foundational Coaching on your favorite social media platforms. Kick off your Saturday with me tomorrow morning at Coffee and Reflections on Substack, where I'll share my deepest reflections and most personal stories on the weekly virtue. I'm honored to be a part of your story today, and I'm proud of your growth, my friend. I can't wait for our next time together, exploring the vault.